The reading today is from Luke chapter 10. A scroll keeper, one who was skilled in his knowledge of tribal law, came to Creator Sets Free to test him and trap him in his words. Wisdom keeper, he said, what path must I walk to have the life of the world to come that never fades away, full of beauty and harmony? He answered him, what is written in our tribal law about this? Tell me, how do you see it? The scroll keeper spoke from the words of the law. You must love the Great Spirit from deep within, with the strength of your arms, the thoughts of your mind, and the courage of your heart. And you must love your fellow human beings in the same way you love yourselves. You have answered well, Creator Sets Free said back to him. If you walk this path, you will live. But the scroll keeper, wanting to look good to the others, asked him, who are my fellow human beings? Creator Sets Free answered him with a story. There was a man walking the road from the village of Peace to Moon Village. On the way, he was attacked by thieves who beat him, stripped him of his clothes, and left him bleeding to death. Now it happened that a holy man was on the same road, not far behind. When he saw the man, he went around him on the other side of the road. Not far behind him was another man, also from the tribe holy men are chosen from. When he saw the wounded man, he did the same thing as the holy man. Then a man from High Place, who was also walking the road, saw the wounded man. Even though he was not a tribal member, but a mixed blood despised by the tribal people, he felt pity for the man. He helped him by pouring good medicine on his wounds and wrapping them in a cloth. He put the man on his own animal and took him to a lodging house to care for him. The next day, when the man of High Place was leaving, he gave from his own money pouch to the keeper of the lodging house. Use this to care for him, he said, and when I return, I will give you anything more that is needed. Creator Set Free then looked at the scroll keeper and said, which one of these three acted as a fellow human being to the man who was attacked by thieves? The scroll keeper answered, the one who had pity on him. Go, Creator Sets Free said, and walk in the same way.
Today we're going to have two storytellers from our church, and I believe Shanna will come first.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I'm Shanna. I'm married to Alan, and we have baby Harriet. They were here earlier, but it's her nap time, so they had to go. And normally we're on Zoom, but we're hopeful that we can start to come back in person more frequently. When Christy asked me this morning to be one of the storytellers and said that the topic was community, I thought it might be a good opportunity to share a bit more of myself and my story with all of you, and to reflect back to you the ways that your practice of community has been healing to me personally in this past year. So Alan, Harriet, and I have been attending Hyde Park Mennonite for about a year now. We were coming pretty regularly in person last summer. But there are still many of you that I haven't had the opportunity to connect with on a very personal level yet because of all of the uncertainty that we are constantly, navigating together. So COVID and nap times and all of that have just really kept us from being able to come in person as much as we would have liked. I cannot think about community, actually, without thinking about all of that collective change that we have been navigating together on a global level that started in March of 2020 with the onset of the COVID pandemic. I've personally never read or heard the word unprecedented as often as I had in those first 6 months as the entire world tried to figure out how to operate when faced with significant changes like school, work, and business closures, cancellation of important events, major stress on systems like the education system and the healthcare system, and an elevated sense of shared grief as so many of us lost loved ones to the virus. We know how difficult this near constant change has been on the collective, on everyone in the world. But while the entire world was experiencing these common changes together, I was also navigating profound transition in my own personal life. So Alan and I sold our home that we had owned in Kansas City for many, many years together and moved across the country to Boise in September 2020. So that was a change. That was a change in my dwelling, in my geographic location, in my social network, and in my community. And we discovered that we were pregnant and had Harriet, our first child. So that was change that happened to my body, my mind, my identity, and the very essence of my being as a person. And then earlier this month, I left my job. I've held roles in the same company for over 7 years, and that was a large part of my identity as well. So it's another large change that I'm processing and navigating and integrating on top of everything else that I've experienced over the last 2 years. So there have been many times in that span of time that I have felt like I could not get my feet under me. And in fact, to mix metaphors, it was really all I could do to keep my head above water. And here's where it connects to the idea of community and to this body. Our church community in Kansas City was a significant part of my life for almost 15 years. And personally, I was very involved there. I was personally involved in the lives of congregation members that were my beloved friends. And I prided myself on being someone who was a very active participant in our church community, someone who would try to put as much energy and effort and time into the community as I got out of it. So that was the kind of person that I thought of myself to be. When we showed up at Hyde Park Mennonite last summer, we were immediately welcomed so warmly by all of you. But I very quickly realized that because of everything I was experiencing personally, I had so little to offer by way of community participation or even support. Most of the time I was tired, stressed out, and overwhelmed, and not really ready to form new relationships with people that I was just getting to know. I was not ready to offer my time and energy in service to this fellowship, and it made me feel guilty, like I wasn't playing my part in the community. Still, you all didn't seem to mind. You showered us with love when we did show up to church in person. You dropped Halloween treats, Valentine's Day cards, and Easter activities off on our front porch for Harriet. Sorry. I'm just so touched. You continued to invite us to events, into your homes when it was safe to do so, for meals, and to just serve us in various ways. When my sister broke her leg earlier in January in a very dramatic accident up at Bogus skiing, you sent us emails and messages checking up on her healing progress. Sorry. We often declined those invitations. We often couldn't make opportunities work because of childcare, and we didn't make it to church in person very often. Still, you weren't offended. You kept consistently and kindly extending your hospitality and kindness to us, regardless. So I've learned a big lesson about community from you all. When I close my eyes and I imagine community, often in the context of eternity, I see a big happy dinner party. that's just what I love the best. I see a table that's loaded with delicious food. I hear the sounds of laughter and conversation, and I see faces of people who know that they are safe and known and welcome at the table. But what happens when you don't have energy to go to the dinner party? What happens when you don't have energy to contribute to the meal? What happens when you are so exhausted and overwhelmed, you don't have anything to add to the conversation? Do you just get left out of the party completely? According to this fellowship, the answer is no. You have patiently extended community to us time and time again, letting us know that we are welcome here. And slowly but surely, as I recover from all of the change and find myself again, I've discovered that I do have something to give. The demands on my time are different, but I do have time to serve. When you ask me how I am, the answer will probably always have something to do with Harriet, but I do want to connect with you all in conversation. So I thank you for being persistent and patient in your offer of friendship to me. Alan and Harriet, it was the exact kind of community that we needed over the last year. And I'm excited to continue forward with other deeper expressions of community too.
Thank you, Shanna. Thank you for your vulnerability, which Brené Brown says shows how strong you are. And thank you for your words of wisdom. And Bob?
This podium looks taller from out there. And I printed this large, and it may not be large enough. Good morning. I want to start with the text that we read or heard this morning. It's from the 10th chapter of Luke, and it's a well-known text, very frequently referred to as the story of the Good Samaritan. It's told today to us from an indigenous First Nation people's eye view. But the message is the same. Go and walk in this same way. I've been exposed to a number of different cultures, a time in Asia, a time in East Africa, and now this indigenous eye view. And in each of those, I come away saying, I have so much to learn. Go and walk in the same way. The story contains many reversals or twists that challenge our expectations. We would expect that persons, one of which is identified as a holy man, would choose not to assist the man in passing on the other side of the road, but rather do the right thing. A second man is identified differently, but he did the same thing. Nothing. Then the story takes us to a third man coming along who was from the outside. Not of the same tribe, one who had no responsibility for the injured person, one who was despised by the people of the injured man. But he did what was expected. He took pity on the man and acted as we would expect. One of the things that we expect from others is the twist. And the rest of the story plays out as we've all come to well know. But what was his moral compass? What did he act so differently? Why did he act so differently from those who we expect to do the right thing in a predictable manner? He saw the need and he acted upon it. In fact, we're told that he went to extremes. He went to extravagances certainly more than we might expect that he needed to do. He saw the need and acted almost instinctively. And we are told by implication to walk in that same way. This then becomes the connection for the story and how a community functions, how a family acts in times of need. I think there's a fine line between the terms community, family, and fellowship. I think for the terms can nearly be interchangeable. And when Christy came and asked me to share my thoughts on community, these three words popped up in my thinking rather quickly. Community is a word that is pulled together and pulls together our thinking, our shared beliefs, and the communities that often are hard to describe. To a point, these three terms, community, family, and fellowship, have a common thread. Hyde Park Mennonite Fellowship is probably the smallest worshiping community that I've ever been a part of, second only to a little mission start church when I returned from Vietnam and stayed in the West. This then prompts the word family. It seems to be very much of a family, and all of you have made Vivian and I most welcome during this last year. We started looking in nearly 2 years ago when Pastor Mark surrendered his call here and took on the role at Corpus Christi. Not a very good omen for our first online visit. But Gary Jewell and Rachel Gucci answered a lot of questions, offered books to consult, and sent us a church directory in that fall, and some financial stuff that helped us shape our decision-making on what is important to this fellowship of believers. Vivian probably has more connections than I did to this community because of her participation in homeless and hunger issues in the city. But there's a conundrum here, however. When a group takes on a new member, there's a realization that this new person might bring change. The conundrum is that what drew us here are some of those things that we probably don't want to see change. But change is a reality, and we need to learn to be comfortable with it. We have never often moved from one church to another, usually some Richter scale stuff that forces us to reassess our thinking. In recent years, COVID taught us to reassess our discipleship, to take a look at our response to the imperatives of the Gospels, to consider to take care of the sick, the poor, the widow, the homeless, and the hungry, and not to pass on the other side of the road. We quickly discovered that these were the issues important to this worshiping community, this family in Hyde Park. To return to the notion of family, there is a saying that you can pick your friends, but you cannot pick your family. I think being a part of a worship community is something like that. We open the doors to any and all who might come and visit and accept those who wish to stay. So the question becomes, who is choosing who? Now, every family has a weird Uncle Ned. I checked the directory and there is no Ned. There is no Ned in this worshiping community, so I think for the moment I'm safe. Uncle Ned is that guy who shows up once or twice a year, doesn't agree with anyone politically, has an opinion about everything. We like him when he does appear, but there's a part of us who at the end of the day very happily says, "See you next year, Uncle Ned." So this is where the family piece shows up. We take each other in, warts and bumps and all, and we love them as much as they will allow us to do. That is family. That's community. But what makes this community distinct? I often ask the question, if a church went out of business tomorrow, would anyone in the neighborhood notice? I would suggest yes. This little North End church has a large presence, and its fingerprints are everywhere in this city. Another question: are we the same on Monday that we claim to be on Sunday? If a person looked in through the window on a Sunday morning, pulled back the drapes a bit, what would they see? Would they recognize us from the workplace, from the grocery store line, those places that we exist in during the other 6 days of the week? Again, I would say yes. These are two tough questions, and they are the very thing that we examine in considering joining this fellowship, this family. We've never been a part of a family that identifies members in the way that is done here, by signing on to a covenant, a list of agreed upon things that holds us together as a statement of how we choose to live. Previously, we were part of churches where membership is established at the outset and never again discussed. No one asks why one or another is there, and to the point that no one even asks in private why they might be there. The word comes up then, habit. And I'm a bit wary of habits, as I think they dull our awareness to the presence and activity of God. It can turn into a humdrum where we overlook the possibilities for discipleship. And I want to take a moment and read this covenant, because it would seem to me that it really needs to be addressed regularly. Coming together as a Christian faith community known as Hyde Park Mennonite Fellowship, we commit ourselves as we are able to the following: to enjoy fellowship and support by participation together in worship, prayer, service, my favorite part, and play. To serve one another in the world by sharing our talents, resources, time, and abilities so that God, justice, peace, and healing might flow through us and into the world. To support the work of the larger Anabaptist vision, which joyfully seeks to live out Jesus' teachings of salvation, peace, nonviolence, restoration, and care for the whole of God's created world. To value the attitudes of hospitality, humor, diversity, honesty, and openness so that we may give to others and to ourselves that same grace that God offers to us all. And I've lost a page. Well, okay. Now I have to confess, I did not visit with Ben first about failures. This, I think, is the busyness of God and how this fits. Am I going to fail you? Yes. How am I going to fail you? I don't know. When am I going to fail you? I don't know that either. But I trust that this family, this community, this fellowship will continue to accept me and hold me up. I can only hope that I don't turn into weird Uncle Ned. This is a family that sees the need of the community and acts upon it. This is a very special place, and I wish to thank you all for your warm welcome, and I'm excited to be here, and I'm looking for what God is up to with this family and this fellowship.
Thanks, Bob. One point I really appreciate that you made was we strive to give unconditional love to one another with our warts and our failures. I think that's something we strive for. Ernie.
So I'd like you to join me in this song, number 777, in the hymnal, number 777.